Welcome to Burn the Ship, the podcast where we connect entrepreneurs and professionals. And you guys being future entrepreneurs, we'd like to connect you to people that have walked the walk and talked the talk. I'm your host, Ezra Brown, and this is without further ado, I'll let you introduce yourself, my friend.
Oh yeah, my name's Eric Miller. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Noonan Coweta Habitat for Humanity. Our mission is to build affordable homeownership opportunities in the community of Coweta County, Georgia. We're about 20 minutes south of the airport, so right inside Metro Atlanta.
Right, in a booming area right now.
Yeah, it's popping down here, man. We're like
Absolutely.
Marietta on the south side.
Right, exactly. Kind of give me a story. Where'd you start and how'd you get into this?
I graduated college with a real estate finance degree in 2008, which was not a fantastic year to be in real estate finance. I there just wasn't much going on, dude, and I didn't want to wait tables or bartend anymore. I wanted to do something a little more interesting than that. And at the time, I had a friend who was doing a term of service with AmeriCorps. If you've ever
Okay.
heard of AmeriCorps, it's like domestic Peace Corps kind of.
Mm-hmm.
It's paid volunteerism. You don't get paid much, but it afforded me the opportunity to travel a little bit and do something a little more interesting than just kind of playing around in the service industry, build my resume a little bit. I joined the Montana Conservation Corps. So I moved out to Missoula, Montana, lived in the woods, grew a big beard, and did service projects. Did about 1,000 miles of backpacking out there that year. Coolest year ever. It was really rad experience. Learned a lot. Got out of my comfort zone a little bit. To this day, if I ever meet young people and they don't like, there's those people that like, I would definitely want to be a podiatrist or like an engineer when I grew up. Like, good on you, go to college. Like,
Right.
but if you have no clue, huge advocate for AmeriCorps. It's a great way to get life experience and build your resume. And at the end, they also give you an education award. So I was able to take a few grand that they gave me at the end of it and kind of push that towards my student loans. But you can go do anything with that money.
That's awesome.
After that, I wanted to make a little bit of money because I had some student loan debt and I had this degree that I wanted to try to use. I bounced around the corporate world for about 6 years. And I know that there are definitely some good corporate gigs out there.
Right.
I never had any of them. I had two. One was in upstate New York, and I was a logistics facility manager. They did not tell me when they hired me that they were moving me to like basically the murder capital of the United States that year. It was like really harsh environment and
Right.
like I was like Freddie the frat boy coming in, like, let's go gang. And like all my employees were like hard ex gang members, like really good people, but
Right.
like they were just born into a rough situation. And I only lasted about a year in that. You've heard everything about warehousing and that's just a rough culture. Then I went into medical IT for a little while, but that company got bought out by a private equity firm and it just didn't go well for my purpose. So anyways, I spent about 6 years doing all this stuff and just didn't have any experiences that I was really enjoying. I was stressed out, I was young, partying a little. I didn't really have great like self-care routines or anything like that. But I remembered that nonprofit experience I had had in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just convinced. I was like, surely someone gets paid to do that. Because even though I was kind of like a poor kid being a volunteer doing that, it was such a good energy and such a good space to work from.
Right.
So I started looking around for entry-level positions in nonprofit space, and I just happened to find one in my hometown of Noonan, Georgia. It was not a plan to end up back here, but I found a job that was fairly low level. I was just moving couches in the warehouse of the restore. I was pretty overqualified for it. I had to actually talk the executive director into hiring me because she thought I was trying to scam him or something.
Right.
But they hired me, and I luckily shortly thereafter, the executive director that they hired was this spectacular woman with energy and vision, and she wanted to develop her employees. And I just saw that this is like a woman I want to work for. So I stuck it out with her for quite a while, and she just gave me skills, and I was hungry. So she was just like, "Do you want to learn how to write grants, do special events, run the volunteer program?" And I was like, "Feed me, feed me." So I was
Right.
just kind of building all these skill sets and having a really good time doing it because I was in this new space. And she eventually, it was always her dream to move out to the Pacific Northwest. So she got an opportunity to move out to Portland. And she just called me one day and was like, "Do you want the gig, dude?" And it was super scary and terrifying, but I learned kind of along the way that I need to lean into that. Like if it's
Right.
something that's scary, but something that you know in your heart and your intuition is telling you is a cool opportunity, it just feels out of your reach and it
Right.
feels like you'd have to level up to get there. you got to go for it. So
Right.
I did a big presentation for our board of directors and also interviewed with all 9 of them, and I got the gig. And I've been the CEO of Noonan Kaywood Habitat for about 4 years.
That's awesome, man. You enjoying it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I love what I do.
It's
I have
definitely that nonprofit space we can appreciate. We help out a ton with nonprofits. We do credit card process,
nice.
merchant services. But we have such a big network of people that we like to connect and do things for the community. We also have our content side based YouTube channel where we donated
Nice.
about $6,000 worth of toys this
Oh,
Christmas.
that's awesome, man.
Just to help out Must Ministries. I'm sure you're familiar with who Must is. Big
Yeah,
big
yeah, for sure.
big
It's a
time.
great mention. So here's the way I look at it, just for your listeners. They probably know this already, but like there are services that your community needs, and those either get filled by the government,
Right.
like fire, cops, things like that, or if they don't, commonly that's right now affordable home ownership. That's not
Yeah.
something that's really out in the market. People need clothes. The housing insecure populations need shelter and food and the thing. If those aren't getting filled by the government, they either have to be filled by private entity
Mm-hmm.
or nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to kind of think of it like that. There are essential services, and government doesn't cover everything.
Right.
So invest in your nonprofit sector. It's actually a pretty large portion of the GDP in this country.
Oh yeah.
I think it's like 5% or something like that, which
Yeah.
isn't peanuts. And those are some important jobs. And pay your people well, because you want high functioning people running those nonprofits, because you want them to be effective at addressing the social issues that they're attempting to address. So in our case, that's, you can't buy a house right now pretty much anywhere across the country unless you're making about 120,000. That's the new middle
At
class.
least,
So
yeah,
it's
at
like,
least.
that's a huge gap underneath that. We serve between 30 and 80% of area median income. And we get confused a lot with government voucher programs, or what some people think of as Section 8, and they
Yeah.
think that we may be building like blighted housing. It's not true. We build very beautiful homes, build custom houses, and it's about equality of opportunity, not outcome. Our homeowners, they do 250 hours of sweat equity. They build their own house alongside community volunteers, developing pride of ownership in
Right.
this thing that they're about to get.
Right.
They have to pass 8 courses on finance, budgeting, escrow, credit management, even home repair. We have to arm them with the skills they need to succeed as first-time home buyers. And then at the end of the day, at the end of the program, yes, they do indeed get an affordable mortgage payment that is below 30% of their gross monthly income. And that's a super important metric, because if we can keep them below that, so most of our homeowners, their mortgage payment all ends like $600-700 a month, which is
Yeah.
killer.
Awesome.
That tells us statistically, economically, we know they're going to be able to save more money, do more for their children, and provide more, and hopefully eventually create generational wealth and
Right.
pass that down to children and grandchildren and that sort of thing. So that's not just people super low on that income spectrum right now. That's policemen, firemen, teachers, service industry workers,
Absolutely.
people, your medical employees, and things like that. So the people who live and work in our communities are having trouble living in our communities right now. They're getting pushed out by really high rents and really high housing prices. So
Right.
Habitat seeks to kind of address that.
Right. And I can very well relate to that. Especially my father was he was a cop for about 12 years, staff sergeant here in Dallas, Georgia. So I can very well relate to that because, and this was from the time of like 2007 to, I guess I would say probably 2014, 2015. So my life was a lot different, as my my early years. We owned a massive heat and air company.
Nice.
And goes to that type of lifestyle, as to where it's, paycheck to paycheck. 'Cause my mom's never been, what she does is just was peanuts at the time, and
Sure.
now it's a little different now. But then my dad was blessed enough to go back into sales world where what he does very well. And my life changed. But I understand what you do, and I can very well appreciate it because I know what it was like to grow up and where the damn same pair of pants 3 days, or where you're looking for that next meal, or it's ramen. You know what I mean? You're eating ramen 2 or 3
Oh,
times a
for
week.
sure, dude.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
and look where you're at now. You're hosting a podcast, dude. You're killing it.
Exactly, man. Exactly.
Like,
I can very well appreciate it, man. I worked for one of my dad's best friends, so I got a good gig.
that's cool.
I
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
I do.
And it's not that. So really all we're doing is acknowledging that some people are born on first base and some were born on third. And that ain't
Exactly.
fair, but it is true, and we can't do anything
Yeah.
about it.
Life
But
ain't
that
fair.
does not, yeah, life totally isn't fair. And that also doesn't absolve people of the responsibility to meet themselves where they're at, right?
Right.
So even though you were born into this rough situation, our program gives people the opportunity, I think, to seize an opportunity. And the fact that they are doing it for themselves and they're putting in all of that work, that's why it sticks to the wall on the back end.
Right.
And I think that's what differentiates us from a lot of like entitlement programs. And that's what people confuse Habitat with.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry for hopping on my soapbox there for a minute, but I never can miss an opportunity to educate the public about what we are and what we aren't. Because again, it's a quality of opportunity.
Right, and that is something that's very. I guess you would say you guys are kind of in y'all's own little lane in your vertical of what you guys are doing, because that is very. It would be very easily to if I didn't hear the soapbox or hear your spill,
Yeah.
to be like, oh, this could be like something Section 8 wise or something like this. But you guys are actually educating these people on how to be successful in their lifestyle and how to save money, how to grow yourself. You know what I mean? Where to put your money into, or where to what to do with your things, and
How to work on your credit and maintain that. There's a lot of pitfalls out there these
Yeah.
days for people. Like if
yeah.
you ever notice, like Google's always listening to you, so it's going to send you those sneakers that you were talking about with your friend the other day, and then it's going to give you a little option that you can you can finance a pair of shoes over 4 payments, and it's
Yeah.
like, stop doing that, people,
Yeah.
because that stuff's ticking your credit over and over. But people
Yes.
who are kind of struggling in paycheck to paycheck, they want a nice thing every once in a while, so they're kind of looking at that like, oh, that's an opportunity to do something nice for myself. You got to think it's the thing that we're not good at as humans, that we're always trying to get better at, is we're bad at putting off short-term gratification for long-term success. And it's
For
very
sure.
difficult to do. And I mean, I wasn't good at it until I was like 37. So
Right. I
it's
still
like,
struggle with it today, right now.
hey,
Like
it is what it is, man. But it's kind of a wisdom thing. You don't know until you get a little taste of what
Right.
kind of financial freedom can be. It doesn't feel like it's possible.
Right.
So we're just trying to set the conditions for that to be possible.
Right, and I can very much appreciate it, because I can tell you where you guys are located, rent is not $600.
No,
You
no.
know,
I'm 39 years old and the CEO of a company. I got a roommate.
Right.
I mean, it is what it is. Like,
Yeah.
and I could live by myself, but I wouldn't save as much money as I'm saving right
You know
now.
what I mean?
So
Yeah, you'd be going end to end. You wouldn't be able to go out and
yeah.
play golf. When you leave the office today, or play golf tomorrow morning. You know what I mean? I got the gist. I know where you're going today,
Really?
because I'll be right behind you. But
Yeah, this was up.
but no, man, it is super awesome what you guys do. What was something that you struggled with when you first started?
So one personal, one professional. Professionally, just drinking through a fire hose, because
Right.
running a nonprofit organization, I think sometimes people think that it's like not a real business or something like that, or that it's easy to run or something. It's actually, I think it's incredibly difficult, because we don't have, since we don't generate revenue through traditional lanes, we've got a lot more to deal with. We're juggling a lot with a lot less resources.
Right.
So it was just learning and learning and learning. And I definitely benefit from being part of the larger Habitat network. So since there are Habitat for Humanity affiliates all over the place, I can easily pick up the phone and call another CEO that runs Cobb County or Gwinnett or whoever, and I'd be like, hey, this weird thing came across my plate. Have you ever dealt with this before? And that sort of thing. But again, to level up, you have to kind of enter into uncharted territory and just be vulnerable that you may not know everything, and do your best to be humble and transparent, and kind of fail forward, and you make the best decisions you can with the information you have at the time. And
Absolutely.
if that goes great, then great. If not, you have to have the humility to step back and go, cool, we did our best, but how could we have done it better, and what information were we missing to make a better decision at the time?
Right.
Personally, just hardcore imposter syndrome. And I think that's just like most people have that on some level. Yeah, dude. So like the second you're referred to as like an executive director or a CEO, I never envisioned this for myself. This was never going to be. I was actually in a room. I forget what the event was, but there's a woman in this community who's spectacular, and she does a lot of work for the community. But she was one of my teachers in high school too.
Mm-hmm.
And she was introducing me to like speak for a few minutes about something. And she did. And she said, and here's Eric Miller, CEO of Habitat, whom I did not think would be doing this for a living back in high. Like, she kind of like jabbed me a little bit, but it was all in good fun, and I appreciated it. But she's right. Like, I was a soccer player who didn't care about anything in high school. I was not, my academics were not something that I prioritized until I was like halfway through college, when I started taking myself a little more seriously. But anyone out there who's ever presented with an opportunity to do something that they feel is larger than themselves, You are phenomenally more capable than you think you are. You just have to get in there and start moving your arms around.
Man, I can't agree with something more, man. Especially, I love that you say the imposter syndrome because I feel like that is something that's very common, especially in youth and business or into the real world, into the corporate world, anywhere in the business, realm. Because now, I'm 24 years old and I go, I network a ton. I'm around a bunch of people all the time, so when
But
I walk in somewhere, I'm the youngest person there, by
yeah,
most of the time at least 10 years,
yeah,
and I have one group where there's somebody my age, and luckily she's gold too, you know what I mean? She's sharp. So, I've learned me and her pick off each other a lot, because we both went through it together, we've been doing this for about a year. She's been doing it for like 8. So I
nice.
was like, you got some leeway. Kind of what helped you get through this, because I was
Yeah,
definitely, I'm jock as they come,
yeah.
I was a 3 sport athlete growing up. Then I get to college. I played baseball for 5 years. At me and you go West, go Wolves,
Where
baby,
at?
go
Where
West,
at?
go Wolves.
Oh yeah, we're Wolves. I forgot.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Sorry, they were the Braves when I got there, and they changed. So I
right,
always
right.
forget.
So I was very much that. I'm always right. I'm gonna make the way. I'll find a way on my own. I'll do it on my own. Whatever. And it took
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
kind of getting through my first 2 years of college to kind of learn, like, you ain't it, dog. You're not the
Mhm.
hottest thing on the block anymore like you were, 6 months ago. You
Oh, the
gotta.
real world is so humbling.
Yep. And then baseball helped me with that through college. As my time, I threw a ton. I can't complain. Like, I threw probably 100 different appearances in college, maybe a little less than that, but it's very well going to be over 70 because I had 60 at West Georgia.
Yeah, yeah.
But I once I got in the business world, it was, I have great people in front of me. I got great mentors, but it was just what's going to make me tick. You know what I mean? They can't make you tick. They can give you all the tools, but what's going to make that imposter syndrome go away for you? And you know what it was for me? It was just doing it. I don't know. I
Mhm.
bet you can very well relate to that, but just getting up and
I
doing
think
it.
it's doing it, and also it's kind of twofold because you're certainly doing it. At the end of the day, you kind of are just within yourself trying to do things that are difficult for you so you can level up.
Right.
But it sounds like you got a really good team around you as well, and you do have a good group because the older that I've gotten, I am such a firm believer that you are 1,000,000% the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So like as far as that kind of goes, I
Hmm.
started training jujitsu a few years ago, and one of our professors, Professor Chris, is always saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, take a team.
Yep.
And it's having people around you with similar goals that are striving kind of on a similar level as you
Hmm.
to bounce things off of, to bounce energy off of, to train with, to practice with, and not just in combat sports or in jiu-jitsu or in
Hmm.
baseball or anything like that, but in the business world as well.
Yeah.
People who are trying to do better for themselves and do better for the people around them. And
Right.
that kind of community, I didn't realize I was missing it. I was a team sports guy and I was in a fraternity in college.
Hmm.
And then I was kind of solo for like 8 or 10 years
Yeah.
at the beginning of my career. And it wasn't until I found my nonprofit tribe, but also my jiu-jitsu tribe that I
Yeah.
was like, oh man, this community around me is so important to my
Yeah.
success as well.
Right.
Because I don't know about, I'm sure there's some lone wolves out there who can just go crush it, but a rising tide lifts all ships. So like
Absolutely.
the people around you are crushing it, you're either going to rise up to their level or you're not. And you're probably
Hmm.
not going to be around that group anymore
Yeah.
if you're not living on the same plane as them.
Yeah. And my favorite quote is a Nick Saban quote. Mediocre people don't like high achievers, and high achievers don't like mediocre people. You know what I mean? And I
Smart
and I
man.
very well stand by that because that's something that's I've always been that way in that sense. But I've also it was definitely harder going from transitioning to talking in front of your team of 30, 40 people that you're around every day to
Mm-hmm.
where I'm sure you did this in fraternity meetings. I'm sure you had some type of power chair at some point in time through your time there.
Yeah.
But so you were having to talk in front of
Rush
you.
chair, actually.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
would say the pinnacle moment for me that I realized that I could do this job actually is when my boss was living in Portland. There was a speaking engagement that came up that a local company wanted us to come do like kind of a 30-minute pep rally
Right.
to get them excited about one of our home builds so their employees could sign up and stuff.
Hmm.
And so I had to go do like a full like 30-minute advocacy speech. She asked me to do it because I was kind of the heir apparent under her. I had never spoken to a room of 250 people, and
Right.
especially like 30 minutes, like a long, it wasn't
Yeah.
short. I had to go up there and think and like answer questions and do the
Yeah.
whole thing. I was so nervous. I don't understand people who like say that they've never been nervous speaking in front of a group of people because that's such like a like genetic thing, and,
Yeah.
and they called my name up, and I like almost blacked out. But I wanted it so bad, and I worked so hard at it. I practiced and practiced and practiced, and I knew everything so well
Mm-hmm.
that my face just made the right sounds and,
Right.
and for the first 5 minutes, and then I kind of like snapped back into it, and I was just there, and I was present, and I could feel them, that they were really responding to what I was saying, and then I was
Yeah.
just in it, and I was going, I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God. So that's probably the starkest example of like, I didn't think that I was capable of that, but I left that meeting and I was like, I could be an ED one day. And
Right.
then about 2 months later, she called me and offered me the job.
Awesome, man. It's awesome how the world works. What would you say?
Yeah.
What would you say was like your strong suit when you first started? You know, what could you always lean on? You didn't really have to, you didn't have to craft it too hard, but I'm sure it's very forged now. But what was that one thing in your tool bag that you knew you could lean on?
I'm hyper curious. I want to know everything about whatever I'm particularly interested in. So we do, like everyone does different personality tests for work. We do strength finders here at
Mm-hmm.
Habitat. We do a couple others sometimes, but I always do that as kind of an intake for my new employees.
Right.
And my very first one is input. The first thing, if there's a topic like affordable housing, or even like jujitsu, or the other things that I'm interested in just in life, like music and things, I need input.
Right.
I don't think I'm the smartest person in the room, but when it comes to like the economics around affordable housing, I want to be the most educated person in the room. So
Absolutely.
I was able in the beginning to at least just dive in. There's a lot of great literature out there on the economics surrounding this issue that we try to work towards. The Joint Center for Housing Studies, the National Coalition for Low Income Housing, I think it's called, the National Board of Realtors. There's all this data out there. So I was just reading like 60, 70, 80 page PDFs and finding all this data. And it just kind of over time, I kind of was able to just build this really nice narrative. So at the
Right.
very least, I knew that I could go out into the community and talk about our mission very knowledgeably.
Right.
And it was the administrative stuff that terrified me, because that is not my strong suit.
Right.
My strong suit, I'm good at delegating, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm good about working with our team and helping them be the best version of themselves in the respective roles. But if like everyone left me at once, and it was just me doing operations and accounting and everything, we'd be in serious trouble, because it's not my strong suit.
Right.
My strong suit is a high level. So I can be 30,000 feet above sea level, and I can direct traffic very well.
Right.
But I would say taking in input and being able to disseminate complex ideas. And it, honestly, to be honest with you, I think podcasting had a lot to do with that. And I've not been on a ton of them, but they started popping in like 2008 to 2012. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
when Rogan and all those
Oh yeah.
started really growing out, and listening to those long form conversations, and having people break down complex ideas
Mm-hmm.
into more manageable and understandable concepts. I think just listening to hours and hours of all those really intelligent people
Yeah.
talk kind of framed the way that I communicate. So
Right.
that's such a big part of running a nonprofit. That was just, I know I could do that well, so I did that as well as I could at the beginning, and then just faked it till I made it with the rest, and did my best to hire smart people that were good at their jobs, to fill in the gaps where we needed them.
Right. And you seem like you got your head on your shoulders in that right sense, because it is super hard for people to kind of step over and realize that what they're good at may be something that
Yeah,
somebody's possibly better at, you know what I mean? Or something that,
100%.
or something that you're not very good at, but ego's tied into it so much that you don't allow somebody to put their hands on it, you know what I mean? Because
Absolutely.
I see it all the time, especially, the business owners always say they may, like whenever I go to sign them up for credit card process, and if, I say you may be a good worker, you may know your industry very well, but you might not be a good business owner.
Yeah.
You may not know
Huge distinction.
you may not know what decisions you need to make yourself grow or to save yourself that money, just because I guess you're ignorantly blind to what's kind of where you could be.
Yeah. Well, COVID was a good example of that, because I did not have a huge background in managing budgets and financials.
Mm-hmm.
So I even told them in my interview that's an area that I would have to grow in. And I kind of got forced to, because once COVID hit 2 months after I got hired as the executive director. So
Ooh,
then all of a sudden I was like, cool, I'm running a company. And then it's like, oh crap, are we going to fold? Like, what's going to happen?
right.
I called it the doomsday spreadsheet, because that's just like my sixth sense of humor. And
I about to say, I
I
remember
just,
you saying that to me on the phone.
yeah, it's like months, I was just sitting there like staring at my computer at noon on a Tuesday, and I had tabs, and it was like, I got pretty good at forecasting. I just wrote down all of our expenses and all of our revenue sources that were dwindling at the time because we were shut down. And it was like, cool, if we're shut down this long, this happens, this long, this happens. And then way down here, it was chapter 13. And thankfully it never happened because we did a good job and we were good stewards of our money. And there was all
Right.
of the PPP money and the ERC money. We were able to leverage all of that. But it was kind of like trial by fire. It was
Yeah.
like you know what, you're not great at forecasting or financials. You figure it out like now.
Right. And
In
that's
some
fun.
ways,
That's
that's the
funny
best way to learn.
because we started the podcast over COVID because we have such a big book of business and a variety of
Hmm.
entrepreneurs in our in our connection network, and then all of our business is face to face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for what we do, essentially, you don't want to go to a credit card processor, which people do all the time. Half the people watching this that do credit card processing are doing it, but going to your Square, your Stripe, or somebody that you can't talk to. You know what I mean? You could talk to the sales rep that came to you, but you can't talk to nobody else, and that sales rep may never answer the phone again. You know?
I need to hook you up with Trey, our restore manager, and let you look at our rates.
Right, yeah, for sure. Because we do, we're in-house, a wholesaler, so we get. That's the best part about it. Jay, our owner, or our boss, he always says when I say owner, he goes, "I don't own you," but uh, but our boss, he got his book of business 22 years ago, so he's completely gets to customize anything. Like that's what we always tell people. Well, in my 60 seconds when I stand up in networking groups, this will be part of. It's always, I've never seen a rate that we can't beat. Doesn't mean I want to beat it though.
Sure.
But I mean, always, and that's we have a full in-house customer service team. We're one of a kind, and we're a unicorn in our industry. Like we have full service team here, and then we have 200 people in Alpharetta that'll answer the phone at any time that you need something, 24 hours a day.
Cool.
We're one
Well,
of
we'll
one.
hook up with you after the fact. We'll exchange some emails, and I'll
For
get you
sure.
in touch with Trey.
For sure, for sure. But last thing I got for you. I know we're kind of pressing on your time limit here, but what?
So I can do 5 more.
Cool. Well, that's about what we need. So, do you know where the illusion that we got "burn the ship" came from? Where we got the name from?
We talked about this in our first call, but I don't recall.
So, Central American Key Store. He lands in nowadays Mexico, Central America. And he made his men get off the ships, disassemble them, take everything they had, all their supplies, everything, and disassemble their ships and burn them. And it was a signal to them that they're going to make it work there. They're going to die trying. And that's the same sense we use in business, in almost day-to-day life too, essentially. But
Yeah.
how did it feel for you to burn the ship?
It was terrifying when it happened. So I think I've done that twice in my life. One was during COVID with this company when we kind of had gotten to a point where we furloughed everyone except for me and Mary, who's now my COO. And it was just her and I on a daily basis trying to keep this place afloat.
Right.
And it was trying and it was scary. I'm very thankful for her as a business partner and also as a friend because we were able to support each other in more ways than just as business partners
Right.
and keep each other's spirits up and that sort of thing. I have a great board of directors who helped me through that. But yeah, no, it felt like that because I got the job and I was so determined to be successful in this role and for this mission, and then immediately have the rug kind of pulled out from under all of us.
Right.
And be faced with, financial uncertainty was really tough.
Right.
But again, as always, I'm 4.5 almost years into being the CEO now, and I'm carved out of wood, dude. You can't stress me out. Like
Yeah.
there's been so many battles that we've had to fight as a team,
Mm-hmm.
that being probably the biggest one. It's not as though they're fun to go through them, but you have to understand that, you enjoy the good moments because of those really tough moments. And those really tough moments make life sweet later on when it gets good again.
Right.
All you can tell yourself is all you can do is the best you can with the information you got. And this too shall pass.
Man, I completely agree with that.
I had a personal burning of the ships. When I was in my mid to late 20s, I developed some autoimmunity and I was having some pretty mysterious health symptoms. And that got to a point where like traditional medicine was kind of failing me and they
Right.
weren't really giving me a lot of answers. And I just had to kind of go on my own journey. And again, thankful to podcasts because there's so much information out there that you wouldn't traditionally be able to get. And I just started throwing everything at the wall between my diet, my routines. I was doing sensory deprivation tanks. I went to silent meditation retreats. Like I was just doing everything I could because I had all these wild health symptoms. And over the course of 5 to 7 years, I found kind of this amalgamation of different modalities that have worked for me, whether it's diet and exercise and self-care routines and things like that, that have really made me, I think, a better and more prosperous version of myself, both for me and for the people around me, so I can help them live better. But that was a big burn the ship moment, because that's pretty terrifying to know that there's something going on in your body and not being able to get any answers from the people you grew up who you thought kind of trusting and that sort of thing. So not to
Right.
take you down a rabbit hole there, but
I understand completely of where you're going with that one. But no, man, I greatly appreciate you. First and foremost, I'd love to say thank you for coming and and waiting.
absolutely, man.
I know we got to you about 15 minutes late, but I greatly appreciate you, man.
All
And
good.
anytime that
Great
you
conversation.
yeah, and burn the ship.